In this video, we will learn about the government regulations that have spurred the adoption of EHRs. While there are numerous regulations which have encouraged adoption of EHR systems in healthcare, meaningful use has by far made the most impact to kickstart deep adoption. Meaningful use was part of the Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act, passed in 2009, known as HITECH. HITECH was part of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, often called ARA or ARRA, or the stimulus bill. So, to recap, meaningful use is part of HITECH, which in turn is part of ARA, all passed in 2009. As the name implies, the goal was to encourage the meaningful use of health information technology. Meaningful use laid out a schedule of EHR adoption requirements for healthcare entities known as eligible hospitals and eligible providers. Eligibility is based on Medicare and Medicaid percentage thresholds. Without going into great detail on eligibility, essentially, all hospitals in the U.S. were required to adopt EHR, and nearly all physician practices, also known as eligible providers, who accept Medicare or Medicaid, were also required to participate. In order to aid in adoption, financial incentives were made available at each stage of meaningful use. Additionally, there are financial penalties for failure to meet the requirements. There are 3 stages of meaningful use, or MU. This timeline, noted by AHIMA, referenced from ONC, offers an informative summary of the stages. Stage 1 of meaningful use covered data collection and sharing and was targeted to be complete in 2011 and 2012. Stage 2 of meaningful use built on Stage 1 requirements by requiring higher completion levels of Stage 1 requirements and adding additional requirements not seen in Stage 1. Stage 2 focused on advanced clinical processes and data sharing with target completion in 2014. Stage 3 of meaningful use focuses on building Stage 1 and Stage 2 requirements with a goal of improving outcomes. Stage 3 also focuses more heavily on patient engagement and communication via portals and education. It had target completion in 2016. The required readings for this section will go into significantly more detail on the specific requirements for each stage. The key takeaway from this video is that each stage has more comprehensive requirements than the last and builds on the previous stages. The Medicare Access and CHIP Reauthorization Act of 2015, or MACRA, was additional legislation which sought to reform healthcare payments under the Medicare programs. MACRA focuses on merit and quality-based payments as opposed to fee-for-service payments. More importantly, meaningful use ceased being the standalone incentive program from 2009 and is now one of the 4 components of the Merit-Based Incentive Payment Program, or MIPS, which is a component of MACRA. When MU became part of MIPS and MACRA, there were numerous sensational headlines that this was the end of meaningful use. While it is true that the original Meaningful Use Incentive Program from 2009 has come to an end, EHR adoption incentives are still alive and well. The inclusion of MU, now known as the EHR Incentive Program in MIPS and MACRA, means 2 things. 1, the U.S. federal government continues to support the adoption of EHR, and 2, EHR adoption will continue to be tied to reimbursement. The encouragement of EHR adoption by the federal government has made a significant impact in coded and structured data collection by healthcare organizations in the U.S. This has led to the ability not only to report on MU-required quality measures, but more importantly, it has led to the rise and enablement of healthcare organizations to develop strong and comprehensive data analytics strategies for the purposes of improving patient care and competitive advantage. As you can imagine, implementing an EHR is a challenging undertaking, requiring significant resources and operational changes. When meaningful use was first introduced, there was significant resistance from hospitals and physician practices. This resistance was not because these organizations disagreed with moving to electronic workflows or that they did not see the benefits. Rather, most organizations felt as though the requirements were too onerous and they were given too short of a timeline to be able to successfully meet the requirements. This was a problem and caused many organizations to focus on checking the proverbial box to show that they completed the requirements as opposed to building a thoughtful and comprehensive implementation plan. In short, the process was very rushed. However, as time passed, organizations have been able to adapt and refine their processes so that not only were the requirements met for the law, but they are also seeing the benefits that EHR brings. Other barriers to adoption include lack of financial resources, lack of personnel, privacy and security concerns, and difficulty in integration and interoperability. We will talk more about some of these barriers during the course.